United Security. I'm guarding that grocery store across the street. Come bearing gifts.
Oh, thank you. That's nice, boys. Hey, all things considered, this is pretty good.
Thank you. I don't have my usual appliances.
Oh, you got any sugar?
Don't push it, man.
Well, hello everyone. Hope you've gone out to a movie this week. Tonight, Grandma has gone to Detroit, the new film directed by Catherine Bigelow, Oscar winner. It is a very intense, dramatic film set during the events of the riots in Detroit in July of 1967. And while it spends, the good 45 minutes or so of the beginning of the film sort of setting up the events of the riots, how they started, and some of the sort of general events that went on, it eventually sort of settles on to one situation that happened during that time where, again, some police officers cornered a bunch of people in a hotel, mainly African American, a couple of Anglo girls too, but mainly African Americans, and we don't want to get too much into the specifics of exactly what happened, but basically killed and abused, beat most of them, and then again, after this situation is over, the film goes into, again, what happened to the police officers afterwards.
What happened to everybody?
Everybody is. Now, again, this being based on true events, most of it first-hand accounts, although they say some of it was dramatized at the end. It's not telling too much to say, again, what happened, where, again, the police officers did not pay for their crimes, you might say. They're definitely their crimes, but they didn't pay for them in the way they should have been. They weren't convicted of the murders and of the crimes they committed. So I don't feel bad about sort of telling that, because anybody can look that up in the history books and find out exactly what happened. What the film does is, again, really dramatize it. So these are all things that nobody has any film of, any video of the events that happened. So again, they had to recreate all of this for us to see the brutality of what happened, and again, what happened.
They had the news reports, but not
all very far away almost.
Yes.
It's interesting to look at it again, how far away from the actual events it really was. But enough about what I had to say. Grandma, what do you have to say about this?
It was very, very powerful, very beautifully presented for the present day audience. I am Grandma, and I was a young wife and mother when this happened. I remember it very clearly, especially the situation at the Algiers Motel. When they got into the meat of the situation in Detroit, I knew that they were going to use the Algiers Motel. I just, I could see it coming, because it was such a dramatic and terrible thing that happened. And because of the trial of the police officers, it was very, very clear to those of us who lived through it, in 67. The injustice of what happened. The African Americans in Detroit had suffered. for years with the brutality of the police, some of the police forces. It doesn't take much imagination to understand how tense the situations were, with the riots going on and everything. And
well, how did the film do in showing you all
oh,
this?
it was beautifully presented, I thought. The actors, I was very impressed with the young actors that they had. The situations of their lives before the riots, during the riots, their mistreatment in the Algiers motel, what happened afterwards. 2 of their members were killed in the situation at the Algiers. They had to deal with that afterwards. I thought it was just absolutely marvelous. It was a wonderfully constructed and directed film. As you pointed out, Miss Bigelow, she did it again. She's created a fascinating depiction of another true event in the history of our country. I held my breath a lot, although I knew what was happening, what was going to happen. It wasn't suspenseful, it was just so intense.
Right.
So intense. What did you think?
Well, I thought it was quite well done. I think it's interesting to look at. I mean, of course, again, it's well acted, well written, well directed. Again, they did a really fine job of recreating the world, recreating the situation,
Yes.
recreating the sort of emotions, the tensions,
Yes.
everything that were present at the time. I think it's interesting looking at it, looking back on it, that all of these sort of protections that people take for granted today in terms of being accused of a crime or being a witness to a crime, all those sort of things, they weren't really there then. and these poor the people involved in these situations, whether they be a witness or they be somebody accused of these crimes, they just didn't have any a lot of the sort of legal protections that we take for granted today, and you just saw these things happening, and you say, well, why? Okay,
They were victimized.
You say, why weren't they able to stop this? Or they couldn't. They didn't
Society
have
was not supporting them.
Yeah, well, I'm going to just to protect the legal. The law wasn't there yet, and again, so they were
victimized.
They were all victimized so easily. The other thing is, again, you can see all these sort of parallels still to, again, the situations today, where again African Americans and police are involved in situations, and sometimes again it's just not solved to the way you maybe think it should result, and again, this is a much more a very clear-cut case, and still the police, they got away with murder.
They did.
And again, it was very well done. Again, I think that on such a sort of a large scale like this, it was sort of hard, I think, to recreate everything perfectly. I mean, it's not a documentary, and so it was. I wasn't quite satisfied at times of the way that they had everything all sort of in terms of the setting and everything like that. That was quite right. But again, that's very quibbling with it. Again, it was very well done, and I thought it was good. I'd recommend it. Although, again, anybody who goes to see it, again, it's not a pleasant film. It's a very interesting film, involving film, but again, it's not very pleasant experience.
I wouldn't call it entertaining,
No, it's not entertaining.
but it was very well done and very enlightening.
There you go.
Enlightening.
So what would you say, Grandma?
Oh, I recommend it highly if you're going to go to see Detroit and you are not aware of what was happening. It's a very clear history lesson of what actually happened.
So what would
Two
you...
thumbs up.
Two
It is
thumbs up?
wonderful.
Okay.
Ms. Bigelow did it again. She's a very, very talented director. I'm really glad that she chose this historic situation to present, because she did such a beautiful job of it. And I recommend that you go see it, particularly if you're a young person and didn't live through the actual event in 1967 like I did. It's a very good film.